What is up, gamers? My name is Doc. In our last video, we talked about the progress I made following the tutorial by Sharp Accent, making a Dark Souls-like game. And in this video, we're going to be going over the Commander RTS concept, despite the fact that we later decided to remove that idea and keep it more as just like a Souls-like, cooperative, competitive type game. One of the big reasons why we still want to go over and show you all of this is because through it we really started to learn and develop the AI system for Karvaros. So that included creating a state machine and even some really big concepts of like creating a bit of an ecosystem within the game. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into that. So, unlike Dark Souls-like game, it was pretty easy to find a tutorial for creating an RTS-like game. In fact, there were too many. There were too many tutorials. So I found myself browsing tutorials for
way too long.
I ended up choosing a tutorial by a YouTuber called Nix Interactive. And one of the main reasons I did that was because he had a lot of tutorial videos going on this. However, this tutorial ended up being the wrong one. And I didn't really realize that until I finished it. So, yeah. Anyway, basically we did create a lot of RTS mechanics and functions. It just wasn't very well founded. It wasn't nearly as organized as Sharp Accent has done with his tutorials. Also, a lot of the coding, formats, and all those things were just very buggy. So yeah, we did eventually end up trashing that, and I would highly suggest finding a different tutorial if you're gonna be creating an RTS-like game. Anyway, the things we did get done. Basically made it so based on your screen position and your mouse position, you could select units, and even when you selected units, we had created a bit of a user interface that would kind of come up. We also got to the point where we could move the unit around by clicking on different places, and that was based on screen position as well as utilizing the Unity nav mesh system. If you're not familiar with what Unity's nav mesh system is, basically it's a pre-written, pre-programmed script that Unity supports and handles that you're able to basically just drag and drop onto your stuff. They got one for like the agents, and then one for obstacles, and then one essentially for your terrain. It's really cool. It helps calculate things. You can even create certain areas to be less prioritized or more prioritized for traversing for the AI. So we kind of got to do a lot of that stuff, which was cool. But like I said, it was very disorganized and it was pretty buggy, so I ended up trashing that, and I decided to start working on creating an ecosystem. The ecosystem was part of the original idea of Karvaros. We knew we wanted to have a game that was procedurally generated, like a lot of roguelike games, but I also was really in tune to this idea of there was like an ecosystem and a lot of enemy types besides other players that you might be fighting. They're just other creatures kind of living and have their own little AI systems and behaviors that essentially the player would be able to learn, and through that know how to deal with each one. Basically, I started creating this system for them all where they had stats for literally everything. I mean, these animals had to eat food or they would starve and die. They would breed, get pregnant, give birth to new animals, and those would have to grow up and they would be prioritized as food by other animals, and it was just a very complex system. The idea for a Souls-like game was already ambitious enough, and adding this whole ecosystem, it was too big. It was way too big. Anyway, it was around about this time that Alex actually really started getting his hands messy and working with us on like a lot more than kind of concept art and writing. This is when he started picking up modeling, and he modeled our first creature, which was kind of like a crab-like creature that we're calling right now Spit Crab, which then I was able to get kind of really my first experience in rigging and animating for that creature. adding our AI system to it. Eventually, because I wasn't happy with the AI system I had created earlier through Nix's tutorial, and basically I created that state machine, got it on the SpidCraft. So basically a state machine is just a programming that controls the AI and says, based on what state they're in, are they wandering, are they in a neutral state, are they attacking something? There's different behaviors within those states of things that they are doing, and also different triggers, if you would say, if they spot an enemy or if they are attacked, it'll change their state to a different state. It's a very much easier handling system than just kind of throwing everything into one code. So we're using that right now for all of our AI. It was about this time that I decided to put it on the side, so I loaded back up our scene with our Souls-like from Sharp Accent's tutorial, and it was the same. Didn't know why, but it was the same. So I realized that when I was working on the Commander RTS-like stuff, I'd made this an entirely just new scene. Turns out when I was saving that scene, I was hitting save as, because I wanted to make sure I was saving it specifically to where I wanted, and I had saved over the Souls-like scene. So all of it was gone. It was all gone. I saved over everything. So I was just freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh, what? I may have just screwed myself over, lost like 8 months of progress on this, and like I didn't know. I was starting to freak out. But thankfully, I had heard a bunch of horror stories of people like their power went out and they lose everything that they've done and all this stuff, and just the importance of creating backups. So right before all this, I had created one backup, which was a Google Drive file. So I was able to bring that back and download it, and then reinsert it all, and I was able to get all my stuff back. But wow, I almost learned that the very hard way, and I was freaking out. So make sure that you create backups for your game, probably every month. That was terrifying. But yeah, so now we have the much more core vision for the game. We're moving that ecosystem, the Commander RTS, and all that out of the game, despite it being a really good learning experience. I'm a big fan of RTS games, so I still want to kind of create something within that realm later, but it won't be in Karvaros. That's basically all the progress I did in 2020. It was really awesome just finishing that year and having all this stuff down, and by this time it was actually like pretty clear what we wanted to do, and from here on out it is making this game happen, and we're excited to show you what's next.